Mortgage rates are right back up to 7%, which makes this the 11th week of rates being near 7%. In the US, there are less homes on the market today than there were a year ago. Existing home sales are slowing, but new construction sales are booming. How are these high rates impacting buyers? Will prices ever come down, and what does all of this mean for the Dallas real estate market? My name is Michael. I own a local real estate brokerage here in the Dallas area, and every Monday I do a weekly update covering all of Dallas and Collin counties. We're looking at trends, which cities and zip codes are the hottest if you may be looking to sell your home, as well as which cities and zip codes are the coolest if you may be a buyer or investor looking for a deal. We're also tracking mortgage rates as well as mortgage purchase applications, as that's our best leading indicator to what demand will look like in the next 30 to 90 days. We're looking at median list price, days on market, how many homes are having price decreases, what's inventory looking like, and if you stick around to the end, it is my favorite, is the top 10 ranked list of the top 10 hottest and coolest, both cities and zip codes. If this sounds like something you're into, make sure to hit the subscribe button. And if you're looking to make a move in the Dallas area, whether it's next month or next year, I'd love to connect. I've helped every one of these yellow dots find their little piece of Texas, and I'd love to help you too. Just call, text, or shoot me an email. All that info is in the description below. Okay, today is July 24th. Let's see what the data is telling us. And if this is an old video, you can click the playlist here and it will take you to the latest market update. First up is market news. As we covered last week, DFW home builders closed a record number of sales last quarter and are on pace for an all-time high. This is in stark contrast to existing home sales, which as of June were down 18.9% year over year nationwide. This is all according to the National Association of Realtors, also known as NAR. So new construction sales are at all-time highs. Existing sales are down over 18%, and yet even with this low demand for existing homes, there's so little supply that prices are still not dropping. Home builders are operating in a sub 6% mortgage rate environment because they're able to offer huge incentives and they're buying down the rate for you. Existing home sales are still operating at a 7% interest rate. So we're really talking about two completely different markets. Another interesting study came out from NAR last month stating that first-time home buyers are responsible for 27% of sales in June. Individual investors, not institutions, were responsible for 18% of home sales. All cash sales accounted for 26% of transactions, while distressed sales accounted for only 2%. And for all the people who have been telling you that we're in a housing bubble, explain this to me. Houses are the least affordable they've ever been. Demand has been completely destroyed by the Fed raising interest rates through the roof, yet prices are still at or near all-time highs in most of the country. That's not how a bubble works. In a bubble, when demand is curbed, inventory should have shot through the roof, and prices should be tanking, and that's not happening. Okay, moving on, let's look at interest rates. As you can see here, we started last week at a 6.89, we got all the way back up to 7 and ended at a 6.98, which in my opinion is the same as a 7. This makes 11 consecutive weeks around 7% interest rates. Now regarding mortgage purchase applications, we saw a 1% decline week over week, which is just more evidence that this market is reaching equilibrium and all of the changes are getting slower and slower. The market over the last few months has been adjusting to these 7% rates. That's what we're seeing. Okay, very quickly, I want to look at our national inventory chart we've been following. So you can see the black line is this year, the green line is last year, the blue line is 2021. But what this means, the black line is under the green. That means we have less inventory than we did last year. And the real concerning part is if you look last year, we had a huge run up, and this year we're having almost no run up, which means it's very likely that we're going to end this year with less inventory that we had last year, which means likely next year we'll be starting below this black line. And I also want to point out we typically do start to decline in overall inventory somewhere around here. I would say a little closer to October if we had a few more years on here. But let's just call it October 1st, we're going to start seeing inventory decline. But I want to contrast that with this chart, which is the new listings chart. So new listings actually typically start to decline around now, yet the overall inventory goes up because days on market starts to go up. So inventory will continue to climb even though new listings are falling. So something else you need to be aware of is from here on to the end of the year, you can expect new listings coming onto the market every week in general. So if you don't like the amount of houses you have to choose from now, you're not going to like it any later in the year. So we're just about to the end of the new listing season's peak, and in a few months we'll be at the end of the overall inventory peak. And all this evidence is telling you is there's no reason to believe it's going to get any easier to buy a house. As I say every week, if you can buy a home, then buy one. And if you're still on the fence about whether or not this is a good time to buy, please watch this video. Very quickly, I'll go over the local MLS data. Over the last 7 days in Dallas County, we had 357 closed sales. That's 57 less than last week. We had 438 new listings. That's 90 more than last week. And 121 of the home sales that closed were immediate sales, which means they contracted within less than a week. And that's 37 less immediate sales than the previous week. Now looking at Collin County for the last week, we had 264 closed sales. That's 44 less than the previous week. We had 334 new listings. That's 51 more than the previous week. And we had only 56 immediate sales, which is down 43 from last week. Okay, let's move on to the housing data. Starting with Dallas County and looking at the Market Action Index, which just takes all of this information, puts it in one easy to read graphic. We are still a very strong seller's market. We are down. So you can see when the decline started somewhere back here. This is when mortgage rates shot up to around 7%. And we've gone from almost 56 to 53, so not a huge change. Median list price finally had a tiny tick downward. Median days on market, I don't know how this works, but we just go from 28 to 35 to 28 over and over. So I wouldn't make much of that. Price decreases are up 40%, but I would say this is one of the lower indicators. This means 40% of homes had a price decrease. But this is the toughest one to follow because you don't know how well people are pricing homes to begin with. There are still a lot of sellers out there who are putting prices on the market that don't make any sense. So I wish there was a better way to discern, like, were these actually priced well and they're having price drops, or are these all the crazy people? Inventory has been pretty steady over the last few weeks, but again, just evidence that this market is frozen with these rates. Everything's moving much slower. Now we're looking at the same for Collin County, which definitely has been hit harder than Dallas County pretty much the whole time. You can see back here was when rates started and we went 53 down to 49. And pretty much that whole time median list price has been dropping. Their median days on market is still low at 21. The amount of homes having price decreases is 39%, about the same as Dallas. Their inventory is well over the last few weeks. It's been a small climb, but overall pretty steady. Again, things are just moving slower as people adjust to these higher rates. And if you'd like to get this data directly for your specific city or zip code, just shoot me a text with your name, email, and which city or zip code you'd like to be set up in. And that way, for your specific city or zip, you can go through all of this data. You can break it down by market segments. You can see what your specific price point is looking like. So just text me if you want to be set up on that. Okay, now we're moving on to my favorite part of the video. This is the top 10 ranked charts. These are ranking out of all 84 zip codes in Dallas County and 26 zip codes in Collin County. So if your city or zip code makes these lists, that's a big deal. Okay, starting here with the hottest cities list. The top 4 remain Grapevine, Carrollton, Louisville, and Saxe. Coppell heats up one from last week. Balch Springs cools off one, so those two switch places. Richardson heats up 2 spots. Duncanville cools off one. Grand Prairie jumps onto the list at number 9. Irving cools off 2 spots, and Plano gets knocked entirely off the list. So the big gainer this week was Richardson moving up 2 spots, and the loser was Plano getting knocked off the list. Now we like to zoom in and look at specific zip codes, and this is probably the first time ever I've seen this at number 1. The number 1 hottest zip code is Richardson 75082 at an 81.4, followed by Carrollton 75007, Grapevine 76051, Plano 75023, Grand Prairie 75052, Dallas 75213, Louisville 75077, Saxe 75048, Grand Prairie 75050, and Coppell 75019. So if you fall into one of these zip codes or cities, you can expect to get top dollar for your property. Now we're moving on, same thing but for the coolest markets. Leonard and Whitewright remain the 2 coolest markets. Ferris cooled off one, Blue Ridge heats up one, Sunnyvale cools off one, Prosper heats up one, Royce City cools off 3 spots, Rockwall cools off one, Salina jumps onto the coolest cities list at number 9, and Farmersville heats up 3 spots to be the hottest city on the coolest cities list. Now if you'll remember, on the Market Action Index, a 30 or below is a buyer's market, so actually Leonard and Whitewright are right on the verge of becoming buyer's markets. But by the time we get up to Prosper and up, it's still very firmly a seller's market. And I want to say something else about these. Salina, for example, most of what's happening here is what we talked about earlier, where existing home sales are slower. In Salina, that's very true. But what you don't see reflected in these numbers is that new construction in Salina is still very hot. I called on a community this weekend that you can't even get an appointment. They have a long list, over 1,000 people at the beginning of the month. They'll email everyone, and the first people to book appointments, those are the people who get in. So there are still wait lists in these hot areas like Salina that you don't see reflected in this data. So just keep in mind, what we're looking at is basically the resale market, as the new construction market has its own data that we don't see a lot of. And that's probably why Salina is having a hard time and is on the coolest cities list, because it's still competing with so many new builds that are similarly priced to those previously built homes, only you'd get a much better rate on the new build as well. Okay, moving on to the coolest zip codes. The absolute coolest zip code, which is still not a buyer's market, but very close. Leonard 75452, Whitewright 75491, Dallas 75219, Ferris 75125, Dallas 75208, Dallas 75203, Blue Ridge 75424, Sunnyvale 75182, Dallas 75209, and Prosper 75078. Very quickly taking a look at inventory, I'm just going to look at the weekly over here to see who is climbing. McKinney, no climb this week. Dallas, a little dip this week. Plano heading straight up, so Plano's inventory is building up. Frisco heading up as well. Prosper, a little bit up, same with Royce City. Rockwall has a big jump up. Garland, you can't see because it's too small, but it looks pretty flat for this week. Allen as well, flat. Wiley had a little decline, but look, it's been going straight up. up. So Plano showing signs of weakening. The inventory is building up, had a big jump this week, as well as it got knocked off the hottest cities list. Still firmly a seller's market, but it's definitely cooling off. Okay, that's it for this week's video. If there's anything you'd like to see on next week's video, please leave a comment below. And as always, if you're looking to buy or sell in the Dallas area, just call, text, or shoot me an email. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.